Live from Austin and Houston, it's the Plutopia News Network Happy Hour. Our guest this time is Kennedy Loftin, Chief Development Officer at the Montrose Center, one of the nation's largest LGBTQ resource centers. The Not Ready for Cable News players are here: Maggie Duvall, Scoop Sweeney, John Lipkowski, and our designated driver for the evening, Susie Sheeler.
Hey, Kennedy. Thank you so much for being here. Hi, everyone else. Thank you also for being here. And I'd like to thank myself for also being here. So, Kennedy, I just had a chance to talk to you not too long ago. I'm so happy to see you again. And I would like to, you just had a great introduction. I think there's much more that needs to be said, but there are some things I would like to specifically say that you have done recently. One of them is the Hurricane Harvey response that the Montrose Center had. I'd also like to hear about the COVID response that y'all have going on, because that's really impressive. And also the senior center that you have working. Here in Austin, we don't have much community, as you know. For the LGBTQ community, we lack cohesion, and that's why we don't have a center and we don't have these kinds of things. So one of the things that is important to me is to bring someone on like Kennedy to tell us about what a center does for its community. And so with that, Kennedy, will you please tell us what the Montrose Center is, as though we never heard of it, and then speak to those programs?
Thank you, Susie. It's an honor to be here. And I love talking about the Montrose Center. Working here is my dream job. Today I'm representing 95 other staff members. That's our full-time group. It's an amazing group of legends, heroes, and tireless unsung heroes that help bring our community together. And there's a lot going on to celebrate in the ATX, and there's a lot that we love there, but I love that we can tell our story a little bit. So this started 42 years ago when Anita Bryant came to Houston, and even though she didn't like us very much, and she brought her Save the Children from the Homosexuals campaign. Boy, was that branding. That really got our community motivated. We had a very large protest, riot, march when she came to visit, and 11,000 members of our community and allies descended on downtown Houston. And out of that came an activist convention called Town Meeting 1, which came a lot of different organizations, of which 4 became the Montrose Center. So without that moment of activism with protest and organization, we would not be here serving, tens of thousands of Houstonians, not just LGBTQ plus Houstonians, but a lot of different Houstonians with very specific needs. What's going on in the climate is something we don't talk about a lot because there's a lot of other important things in the news right now. But that means Houston has had to get good at disasters. Please forgive my bad English there, but we had a lot of spots in a short period of time, and that's not going away because the damage that we're doing to our planet is going to keep us in this front line of experiencing storms and other elements. And we really started to see the breakdown in the disaster response community, nonprofit organization, coalition when it comes to queer folk. After Hurricane Katrina, busloads of people still in their gucked clothes from the flooding would pour into convention centers here in Houston. And that's a long drive. That's 6 hours to be in gucky clothes. And then when they get to go access clothes, they would be denied the clothes of their gender expression and experience a whole different level of discrimination about being queer and specifically being trans people of color. And that was a big wake-up call for us. And so since that, with Ike, Hurricane Harvey, we've been building funds and trying to be the grassroots response that takes care of community, mucks and gucks homes, provides direct financial assistance, and really to this community that we've already built trust with and that we already have a relationship with. That's undocumented Latinx trans folk, that's trans people of color, that is a lot of single housing insecure individuals that fall through the cracks of disaster response. It's built around religious organizations, which can be intimidating to our community, and around supporting couples or people that own houses, not people that are housing insecure, which our community is more housing insecure, more food insecure, and has a lot of more vulnerabilities due to discrimination that's present out in the community. So we've gotten better and better at this, and we're not good yet. There's still a lot of work to do, but with COVID-19, we've kind of already upped what we were able to do with Harvey. Harvey, we raised, all told, over a 2.5-year period, $2 million. With the COVID-19, our LGBTQ COVID-19 fund has raised $1.6 million so far in a much shorter period of time. And the vast majority of that, 90% of that goes right back out in direct financial assistance. The top of the month was just 2 weeks ago. And I remember not being able to talk to our finance department because they were just writing and signing hundreds of rent checks.
Wow.
Each day to kind of help be a part of that. What's intimidating about this pandemic is that 1.6 million is a drop in the bucket. The goal for our fund is 3 million, and we're going to get there because we're crazy fundraisers.
Yeah, you are.
But it really speaks to, and this is going on everywhere, and especially when you get outside of the metropolitan areas, when our community breaks down even more, it gets really, really hard for individuals, and they have to either go back into the closet, choose not to transition, not to express their true selves, and a lot of times to access this aid. We find that all kinds of problematic and work with partners everywhere to try to build out more of this disaster response network. There are some really fun things going on in Texas right now. Equality Texas has stepped forward with a fund trying to provide direct financial assistance, doing the fundraising right now. And there are more and more queer funds that are popping up, which is important because we really want to support that, because that grassroots level can help sustain families, individuals, members of our community for the time it takes for the big orgs to roll into town. You know, because the big disaster response organizations may not have a presence. It may take them a while to set up and to get here and then to kind of bring that aid.
And they may deny it altogether.
Unfortunately, we're seeing this administration do a lot of different things on the topic of denying specifically trans members of our community, but also LGBTQ folk. They don't have the ability to, or organizations are being told they are protected in not serving our community because they don't like us, which doesn't help us feel more comfortable coming to them for aid, especially if they're faith-based. Now, Senior Center, I know it's a little bit of a different, but it hasn't been impacted by the pandemic, which is wonderful.
The Senior Center hasn't?
It has not.
Can you okay, so hold on just a second and let's talk about the Senior Center, because this is really big, and tell us why it's necessary.
Okay, so I get to be a professional queer person, which means like I'm going to a family vacation. I don't even have a mask that doesn't have a rainbow or a trans flag on it. How am I going to go through Alabama? I'm going to buy some masks. I get to do that because of an amazing group of seniors, really the first group of seniors in our community. So our community hasn't identified for a really long period of time. Seniors that came before us, they won all these battles. They were at the Anita Bryant protests. They were at Stonewall. They were incredibly diverse, trans, people of color, youth, homeless. They went through so much, even before the HIV pandemic. And so when you see how seniors in general in our country are being left behind, and then you really focus in on LGBTQ plus seniors, and you realize they're twice as likely to be living in social isolation when compared to their heterosexual peers, 4 times less likely to have the money they need for retirement, and all of their neighborhoods, because people love to live in the neighborhoods in every city, are gentrifying them out at some of the fastest rates of almost any other community. It is a perfect storm for the heroes that made it possible for us to do the things that we do. So we broke ground in August on the nation's second largest and the only one in the region LGBTQ affirming senior living center.
Yay!
Very, very excited about that. And if you go to the main page of the Montrose Center, there's a little story where you can see some of the photos and some of the progress of that. So this is the Law Harrington, named after 2 very important figures in the LGBTQ community. If you scroll down you can see the little building right there. Okay, so this facility will hopefully open if we don't get a hurricane. This facility will open in February 2021. And it has 3 buildings, 112 units for our seniors that will house 150 seniors. And then the main building, which is a senior community center, which will have
Beautiful.
clinic, a geriatric clinic from our community's health clinic, Legacy Community Health, a gym, meeting spaces, media rooms, libraries, a whole bunch of places for even the seniors that don't live there to build a community for our seniors. Because the queer community is ageist.
Yep.
And fortunately, we are behind on taking care of our seniors. There hasn't been many generations of queer seniors coming before. And so none of this infrastructure is there. And so it's really, really, really important to the Montrose Center that these seniors have to move out, go back into the closet, live really, really far away from their traditional cultural neighborhoods. And so we're building this. And as you can see, we got some paint on the walls.
It looks great.
That's awesome.
I'm so excited. I mean, this when I heard about this, I was just absolutely floored that anybody was even considering our community's seniors. If you haven't been to the Montrose Center and you want to see something that has been built from nothing but grassroots community fundraising and a feeling of love and a sense of belonging, you should go there and just look at its history and let Kennedy tour you. He loves to tour and he's really good at it. And I'm just, if you haven't been, you should go. It's just an amazing thing. Tell us about the youth program that you guys have too, because that's a really important thing. We'll go from the geriatrics to the infants.
Yeah, we're coming out to the rainbow years. A good community center is kind of there for you every step of the way. Our youth program is 33 years old. It's called Hatch. That used to be an acronym, but it does not hold up well because what made sense in '87 is no longer the lingo we use today. So we're just going to glaze over what Hatch used to stand for. Nothing too bad. It's just really kind of old and clunky.
It's not the Dixie Chicks anymore. It's just
basically, this program impacted. There were more than 1,200 youth in the program last year, and we're a really wonderful set of services. It started off as a drop-in center, and it still does that 3 nights a week. And that's happening now via, virtual Zoom type situations. It also has just grown and grown and grown and grown. And so it goes out into schools and does safe zones and trains the GSAs, which used to be called Gay and Straight Alliances when I was in high school, but now they're called Gender and Sexuality Alliances. That's been updated as well. It launched thanks to Lady Gaga and the Super Bowl in 2017, who selected us as our partner charity. We launched a homeless youth rapid rehousing program. And what that does is we don't operate a shelter, but we put these youth into their own apartments, pay for their rent, give them wraparound case management services, take care of all of their needs for 18 months on the pathway of them becoming self-sufficient. In the face of COVID, we have decided to hire a third case manager so that we can expand our beds from 40 to 60. We don't really know how we're going to pay for that yet, but there's just such a need. There was already too long of a wait list for our youth. And our youth, even though right now we estimate that 7% of youth are LGBTQ, 40% of the homeless youth are LGBTQ.
Dang.
So a fourth of our community, 25%, become housing insecure when they come out before the age of 18.
Which often also leads to sex work.
Actually, within 24 hours, it's actually less than that. Usually within 18 hours, our youth are propositioned for sex work once they become homeless.
Wow.
And so 60 beds is not going to solve the problem in Houston, but this program launched in 2017, and now we're up to 60 beds. And that you can look at that as a shelter, but they all get to keep their apartments and their furniture and everything at the end of this. And we start over with a new youth on the wait list. This is a model we really believe in, and we're just going to keep expanding it in the hopes that we can make a really big dent, because the best way to build the queer community we want to live in is to start with our youth.
Absolutely.
Because if they don't have the mental health support, if they don't have the housing support, if they don't have the COVID direct financial assistance checks, our youth program spans from the age of 7 to 25, because in our housing program, that's 18 to 25. And that is such a critical time to make sure that, I came out to my family, they're very conservative. I had some brief housing insecurity, nothing like the youth we serve. I had a lot of privilege before, a lot of privilege after, I had a brief moment of sleeping in my car and living off Taco Bell menu. But that is just how much, even with all the privilege of like my background and my experiences, how easy it is in the queer community to become housing insecure. Now,
so is that sort of the main reason that they become homeless, because their family kicked them out once they came out?
That is the primary reason, or abuse, physical abuse,
Wow.
conversion therapy, things around that. And unfortunately, that's been the same since I was a kiddo coming out. I'm a middle-aged man now, so that was quite a bit of time ago. And with so many more youth coming out as trans and gender nonconforming, we're not seeing that drop, right? There may be acceptance increasing for sexuality or sexual minorities, gay, lesbian, bisexual, pansexual, but what we're really seeing is the fastest growing area of our community is these youth that are coming out as gender nonconforming and trans. And that is really causing a lot of homelessness and issues with youth getting forced onto the street.
Do you have counseling services that also speak to the parents of kids who, I mean, could parents actually say, hey, this is what's going on with me. Can I come in and talk to you guys with my kids? And do you have someone for that?
Absolutely. So we're really, really fortunate to have 18 licensed therapists, most of which are in the community, all LGBTQ plus affirming. They have the cultural humility down. And that's wonderful because a lot of it happens in that space. But the other thing, our Hatch Junior program, that's for our 7 to 12-year-olds. That's actually a program where they come in with their guardian and then they split up. And then the youth get to go into their pod and then the adults kind of go over, and we can support those youth. Because when you're a parent and you don't have trans people in your life and you didn't grow up with these issues, it's a lot to learn. Relatively quickly. I grew up in East Texas in a very like Friday Night Lights, Varsity Blues.
Wow.
And now I live in the city of Houston in an episode of Pose, which is much better and much more fun. That was that was a lot for me to learn. I'm still learning how to be the best ally in all of those spaces. And so the Montrose Center really does bring that to our programming. When the youth are lucky enough to be able to come out and have supportive parents, there's a lot of support here. A lot of the times we're working with the youth when they can't, when they have to sneak out of the house to get to our Hatch Youth Prom, and then we have hair and makeup artists and clothes for them there to change into their gender identity, their gender expression, and then they go to prom, clean it all back up, and then sneak back home, because a lot of youth are still in that situation.
Gosh, the things you guys do is just, they're just, I mean, it's just overwhelming to me, you know? So when you first started, did you go around and get other groups that were already formed and start and say, hey, let's all start in this big building together? Or how did it, it's organically, I know from the Town Hall 1, but how did you start it? I mean, what was the first step?
So we started as very clinical. There were 7 people that formed a committee after Town Meeting 1, including our founding therapist, Bill. He passed away from complications during the HIV pandemic, but this group launched us in a clinical direction. And then over time, that direction expanded, and we added substance abuse, we added domestic violence and hate crimes because we need an LGBTQ domestic violence shelter here. And that wasn't something that the area had. And these services kept expanding what we meant by behavioral health. And then organizations would come to us in the community. And this didn't happen at first, but then the first one was the LGBTQ switchboard, which if you've ever seen any movies that are set in the queer community from like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, you always have the gay helpline, right? That's what this is. This is the gay helpline, that's LGBTQ plus. And that became our first partnership. And then Hatch Youth became a partner, and we just grew from there.
There's a question in the chat from someone named Hunter Tripp, who I think we all know and love. Maggie's daughter, Hunter. Are there services that help educate some of these kids that are homeless to help them learn how to support themselves financially or get an education?
So when you get the case manager in our rapid rehousing program, that person, that's their job. They're setting a budget with you every week. They're helping you with workforce development issues. It's very, very hands-on. We do have outreach workers that go out into the streets, and we try to do that there. But honestly, Hunter, it's not very effective when you don't have that long-term relationship where you can get one-on-one with the youth, by the time the youth get into this program, they've gone through a lot. They can become homeless anywhere from the age of like 13 through 16, and they can't come into this program until they're 18. And so they've generally had issues with substance abuse or been exposed to it, sex work or been exposed to it. There's a lot of different things that have happened before. And so there's a whole period of time in that program where we're just working to kind of help them get out of some of the unsafe situations before we can help them plan for their future. We're still trying to figure out how to do that on the streets, how to invest more there, build more relationships. And there's a great coalition of Houston organizations that include dining drop-in evening centers like Montrose Grace Place and Tony's Place and Open Gate. And we're just in this whole coalition of people, especially in the traditional neighborhood, the Montrose area, our queer neighborhood, where that's where a lot of the homeless youth orgs are. We just try to keep a coalition alive, and even with our faith-based partners, try to keep them serving queer youth as effectively as possible.
And just not for nothing here, HEB, can you just, I'm sorry, but I have to give them a shout out. They've done so much just generally for Texas, but they have a deal with you guys, right?
They absolutely do. Okay, out of every single grocery store present in Texas, and I'm sorry, Whole Foods, it's HEB when it comes to support of communities. And when it comes to support of the LGBTQ community, people might be surprised that HEB is one of our longest term corporate sponsorships. And what they help us with is they fund half of our emergency food pantry.
Dang.
We have a pantry, and we give out a ton of food. Well, man, we are giving out some food right now. There is a lot of food flowing out of the doors. And so HEB writes a big check to fund that, and then we go and buy all the products from them at discounted rates.
Oh, wow.
Provide food. It's all HEB brand. So if you come to the Montrose Center for food, you're going to get a box full of HEB brand. I can't remember what their brand is actually called right now. But that's a great thing. And they're not the only corporate partner, but they're a really strong one. And they came to us well before we were good at fundraising, and they've been with us for a very long time.
Well, and that's great too, that they do write you the check so you can buy it. So it's not that kind of commodity food syndrome from hell, and
and we don't have to buy it from them. And a time like this, buy it from Amazon or whatever. They just want to make sure that it's going against food insecurity. So our community, according to the latest William Institute updated study, 27% of the LGBTQ community is food insecure. That's a really high hunger.
Dang.
That's one of the higher ones. And that just kind of, I think it's that storyline, right? It starts off in our youth, and it starts off about 25% of our youth. And then there's all of this systemic discrimination, especially at the intersections of our community. And it becomes the most prominent with our Latinx trans folk and our trans women of color. In those areas, there's so much discrimination, it's really hard to get an economic foothold. And so these are some of the problems the Montrose Center kind of comes in we come in every day work like, okay, how are we going to do better in this area? How are we going to build something that helps alleviate need in this space?
You know, the LGBTQ community has proven very good at educating the community. I watched it happen during the HIV/AIDS disaster. And what is it like now to educate the community about COVID? What kind of programs do you have?
Well, what's interesting is a lot of the long-term survivors, a lot of our seniors, elders living with HIV, they've said they've seen all this before, and they have so many takeaways, and they've contributed so much thought leadership to our response, because they remember everything from the stigma to people not wanting to be around each other to all those different things when the pandemic hit our community so hard. When it comes to education, we like to be sassy and queer and very sex positive. And so we don't do boring ads. We're telling, the sashay away, weird, fun, sassy, interesting for us ways to communicate, making all kinds of jokes and puns around masks, around protection, for going out with your mask, for going in, using a condom. There's a lot of different ways that we play with that educational moment. And education's a whole department here at the center. And so we're actually, in the face of this pandemic, having a little fun kind of bringing some of our old storylines back from the HIV.
Right on.
Yeah.
Venus mask. You can't do better than that. That's a new brand of condom if ever I heard. Well, so what is your next biggest project? Are you continuing to work on the COVID thing, or do you guys have something else going on in the works that we don't know about?
Well, we're really going to hope we don't get hit by a hurricane, because if we get hit by a really serious storm, which it's not looking like it's going to be a very easy hurricane season for us, that will be our next biggest project. But in the dimension where we don't have to do that work, we are going to be doing long-term recovery for COVID for at least 3 years. We're still doing Hurricane Harvey recovery, long-term recovery. And so that is, we're going to be building out and working. As soon as we can get back together safely, workforce development is going to become a really big push. And we're kind of lining up the resources to do those job fairs, create those LGBTQ affirming job lists, or just a list of people that are hiring, and really create both the mental health support groups, because the hardest part about not having a job and getting a job is the mental health component. And staying like positive and focused is really something that we can add that we're really good at to the equation. So since COVID's not going anywhere, we're going to be doing that for quite a bit. And then we're going to open the Law Harrington Senior Living Center.
That's going to be so great. I'm going to come. I'm coming.
Opening it virtually. You know, it may not, or maybe open all day. Come in, no more than 3 people. We'll give you a social distance tour. We're not sure yet. But then we have to build that program. Because right now, our SPRI, Seniors Preparing for Rainbow Years program, has 3 part-time staff members. And that's going to go to 7 full-time staff members in a building where 150 seniors are going to live. So that's a big build of programming, social activities. I mean, we already have great stuff with like senior yoga, senior tai chi, nutrition classes, cooking classes, but all of that's going to have to grow, including the case management and the support. And so that's just a big project that's baked into our strategic plan. So the next couple of years are going to be taking care of our seniors' years. That's really extending our theme of "There's no place like home" for this campaign into something broader.
Right on.
Perfect. I already have my like 10 man. I already have like almost my Dorothy, my 10 man. I'm going to switch back to my little costumes as I need. But those are what we have on the map. Now we have been really working with local funding orgs that are just now starting to understand that the discrimination facing our trans community is really big. And we also have a plan to build a trans area of service. So all of our services at the Montrose Center are culturally humble in all of the intersections of the queer community. But there is a need for very specific case management, like we see with our youth and our rapid rehousing program, for our trans and non-binary community. And so if we can do it all at the same time, which, you know, we got to make sure we don't bite off too much, I would like to see over the next 3 to 5 years us open and really build out our senior program, continue to expand our youth housing program, and then launch a trans area of service that is really as one of our like departments here at the center.
That's just amazing. How do you pay how do your clients pay for medication?
Well, what's great about Houston is our partner organization, our sister org, much bigger than us, is Legacy Community Health Services. And they take care of all the medical. They also came out of Town Meeting 1. They were the Montrose Clinic. And they grew and eventually took LGBTQ out of their mission and now serve all of the vulnerable populations.
Oh, man.
We really share the healthcare burden with them. And so most of the grants that pay for low-income individuals, sliding scale, that really goes through Legacy. So we actually share our HIV case management program with them so that we can do the behavioral health and the case management, and they can do the medical side. We do have a lot of different programs where we get federal and state dollars to help people pay for costs like medical. We're paying for a lot of medical things with the LGBTQ COVID fund right now. But that's fortunately in the Houston kind of ecosystem of nonprofits, not something the Montrose Center has to build a lot of programming around.
Okay, I see. So, and then long term with COVID, what does that look like to you? I mean, is that providing more housing? Is that, I mean, are we going to have folks coming in off the streets and maybe just a cot?
We don't really know.
Yeah.
I mean, here's what we know. The Center for American Progress tracks the heightened levels of vulnerability pre-COVID in the queer community around housing. Much higher percentage using SNAP benefits and food assistance. A lot less underinsured community, underemployed community, housing insecure community. All of these things were our mission and what we were running toward before the pandemic. We know that our community has service jobs, and a lot of their places of employment are closing. A lot of queer places of employment are closing. And so we really just haven't quite wrapped our hands around more than direct financial assistance in our response right now. Otherwise, I'd be lying to you.
I think that's more than enough. I know that yours
It's going to be so big, and then we have to kind of fall back on what we're best at, right? We have infrastructure, we have a lot of mental health support, and so we can do different kinds of support groups, and we can create, right now we're launching Beyond the Binary, and a series of new support groups that really kind of help different intersections of our community find their space. Having this space, once we can get back together, there's a lot we can do around workforce development, job fairs, job training. And by the way, all of the programming at the center is always free. Not all of our services are free, but if you come to an event at the center and it's hosted by the center and not another group, that will be open and free. So Hatch Youth Services, our Spry Diner, which does the lunches Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Not when we're in COVID. Now we're delivering all of the food to the seniors door to door. We've now become, a curbside delivery service.
Well, that goes back to your roots, doesn't it, a little bit? You worked for Meals on Wheels for quite a while, yeah?
Meals on Wheels. I worked at faith-based organizations to learn the skills, to bring the fundraising home, if you will.
There you go.
Not always the most convenient fit for someone as flamboyant as I am, especially when I had to go into like very, very conservative religious communities to fundraise. And they would ask me about my wife. I was looked like, I'm sure, like such a deer in the headlights. Like, wife? Kidding me?
Oh, that had to be fun.
Yeah, it was not fun. Is not the word I would use for it, but there are a lot of queer organizations doing capital campaigns, and you have to go and learn this somewhere. It's kind of hard to go to college for this, although there are some cool nonprofit development programs out there. But if you want to really kind of build infrastructure and take your community organizing to that level, right, and your community building to like the infrastructure level, which is something I'm very passionate about, you got to go to other orgs to do it. Or at least in this region right now. I'm hoping that's the case. I mean, we got a whole team that are helping us here at the Montrose Center do the fundraising for the $26 million project, which is our senior center. And they're all learning it. And so I'm hoping they can take that infrastructure building, that capital campaign knowledge, and then build so many more things.
Is there a kind of I know you network with other organizations, I assume, but is there like a network of Montrosettes around the country, there is, and it's awesome.
Okay. It's on Centerlink.
Okay.
You have to actually, because there's a lot of different Centerlinks. It's a very popular name for things for organizations. But if you Google Centerlink LGBTQ, you'll pull up the umbrella organization, the RuPaul, if you will, of all the community centers, and they have this really great feature where you can go and see which organizations in your community are registered with Centerlink.
Nice.
I would bet that your youth organization, which is so awesome, Out Youth. I bet you. I don't know. Maybe the Kind Center. I'm not sure. I bet you there's something in Austin that is registered with Centerlink. And if nothing else, it's just a really cool resource if you're trying to build a community center. And they do all the things. They do all the conferences. They're based out of Fort Lauderdale, one of the great queer neighborhoods in the country. And they have a great center there. And yeah, they're a wonderful resource to us and to pretty much everybody.
Wonderful.
But you guys also have become sort of an incubator, if you will, a source of funds for others. Can you tell us about that too?
Yes, we have a pilot nonprofit incubator in the LGBTQ space. We got inspired by the incubators in the environmental nonprofit space. And we are the largest LGBTQ org in Houston by far. And there are a lot of communities that are trying to build their infrastructure. So what we do is we offer them free space. We offer them discounted below market rental space here in the building with free utilities and free access to all of our meeting rooms. And we also act as the fiscal agent for nonprofits that don't have their 501c3 yet. And if you join our incubator on that level, we can help you fundraise, build your board, do media. There's a whole series of things, grant writing. We have a crop of 6 organizations right now in the incubator that are out there raising money. We're introducing them to foundations. They're doing incredible work. And we really focus these programs on our intersections. So we're talking about trans, gender nonconforming, and people of color. The Montrose Center has been serving and has had a majority POC staff for more than a decade. And it's really been an intention here because queer communities tend to be cis, tend to be white, and you have to be really intentional. In one space that I'm very proud of, over the last 2 years, one area that's always lagged for our services in being a majority POC is our counseling. And we had 1,700 people in counseling last year. 51% of them were people of color. So it moved into the majority POC group, which is great. And I don't know if you know this, but there's a lot of stigmas in diverse communities and immigrant communities, the Latinx community, African-American community around mental health. And so it kind of shows that intentionality really gaining traction and getting to a place where we can say, yes, and the program that we were founded as, one of our flagship programs, is finally a majority POC as well. Because Houston, if you don't know, is a very majority POC city. So it's very, very important that our programs reflect the community that we're in.
I have heard that. I lived there when I was very small. So we talked just a few minutes ago before we started about your history wall, the gay history. Here in Austin, we don't have anything like what you have. We don't have a center. So one of the things that we all talked about when we were thinking about doing that is one of the things that was really important is that we did have a history, a room or something that really celebrated the history, because we don't know much of it and we don't celebrate it. So you guys have dedicated a wall and more to the history of gays, especially in Houston. Can you tell who and what and why and
Sure. I'm going to go ahead and throw out a link so we can get that up. If we go to HoustonWeHaveHistory.org, Houston is really lucky to have a lot of amazing queer historians, excuse me. And so a lot of what the Montrose Center, part of our mission is, just like any community center, whether it's a Jewish community center, African-American community center, is to preserve the history and tell the story of our community. So it is a part of our mission to add history into every element of what we do. So for the senior center, it's named after one of our founding fathers, Charles Law, and another one of our founding fathers, Gene Harrington. And so what you see in front of you right now is the Banner Project. And the Banner Project is what Susie was referring to, that is in our community center floor, our first floor. And it's just a series of banners of the important moments in Houston's LGBTQ history, starting in the 1930s all the way through the present.
Anita Bryant protest.
Yes. Yeah. That was a very big one for us.
Yeah.
There's also a really wonderful online presence, which you can see right now, where you can see each of the banners and really read a little bit about serve it. This is through this project and a series of other projects at the center. We host, being the convener and the hub of LGBTQ Houston, we want to get out of the way of all the great organizations. We have an organization working to build a museum, GCAM. We have amazing universities doing queer archives at University of Houston and Rice. And so really the role we play is a convener, where we bring these historians together. They meet in our building in a coalition. Every year at Pride, they do the air-conditioned history tent with all the banners. They display the banners in our building. And so cool. Basically, it takes an entire community to preserve history. And so we kind of see our role in there is maybe taking a step back and connecting all the right players, making sure the great archives for our seniors get to the right places, and then make sure that with every tour, and if you come to a tour, and I hope you will come and tour and see us at the center, you'll get that history. We'll walk you down the banners and just give you a little idea of everything that happened here and how we got to the place that we are now and hopefully where we're going.
If I were a young gay person again, I would not have gone to Dallas or come back to Houston or come back to Austin. I would have gone to Houston. they just have the community there is just, it's something that but we don't experience here. It's sad, but they've really built a community, and I don't know why it's happening here, but maybe someday.
Understand, there was a lot more discrimination here. Houston was a lot more conservative, and whether it's Anita Bryant coming to town because she was invited and this was a very welcoming place for her in Texas, or just all the things that helped band our community together and help us build infrastructure. In some ways, Austin's progressive element has kind of maybe taken away some of the impetus to create that community organizing. It
absolutely has.
It also might have something to do with, I've talked to friends in like the music and the arts communities that because we've now crossed 1 million people here, it's almost like when you're baking a loaf of raisin bread and the raisins get farther and farther and farther apart. It's physically, even pre-COVID, it was starting to get difficult to physically connect because you get stuck in traffic, so nobody goes out. And it's just, it's just got a different kind of vibe, definitely.
I think that what is so important for queer communities to focus on is the needs aren't any different in Austin, right? In fact, if anything, Austin, known as a progressive haven, means it's a destination city for homeless queer youth. So more homeless youth will be coming there. They may be leaving Houston or Dallas to come to Austin, right? And so, and you have queer seniors there that have faced discrimination, that weren't able to raise the money they needed for retirement, that don't have housing choices in a city that's gentrifying, from what I'm reading, significantly faster than Houston.
Oh yeah.
So, you would never walk into an African-American community center and be like, we've had a Black president, why do you have this community center?
Right.
I think sometimes in the queer community, they're like, we have logo, there's a big pride parade. Do we really?
Yeah. Well, that's pretty much the feeling here in the community here. It's, will you, and it's not just from within, it's from without. You guys, we're so liberal here, you don't need that. We're fine with y'all holding hands in public type of deal. The fact is they're not.
Well, I mean, if it was true that every trans woman of color had an amazing job and faced no discrimination in Austin, and there were no seniors that were having trouble feeding themselves and living in social isolation, and there were no queer homeless youth on the streets, I'd be like, go Austin. But we know that's not the case.
That's right.
So the answer to that question is, one, that's an offensive question. You would never tell any other cultural group, why are you preserving your culture?
Exactly.
Kind of think about that. And really ask yourself, so who's going to help preserve our history, our legacy, and take care of our vulnerable populations?
Yeah, if you don't write your history, someone else will, kind of.
Or it'll get lost.
Yeah, or it'll get erased.
Our Harvey Milk figure, African-American leader, so prominent and important. His family was very religious, and after he died from complications with HIV, his history was starting to get lost. But luckily, there was this banner from the Banner Project, and we knew he was one of the founding fathers, the 4 founding fathers and mothers and others, the 4 people that built Town Meeting 1. And we knew he had this great speech at the first LGBTQ March on Washington that he helped plan. And so we've done this history project over the period of building the center and reclaimed a lot of really important history from one of the most important Black queer leaders in the South. But it was close to being lost. And that's what happens. You need institutions, you need organizations, you need a banner hang on the wall. People always walk by and be like, who is this person?
Right.
I see myself in this person. Who is this guy? Or this person, yeah.
That's happening just generally too. I mean, Maureen Dowd apparently doesn't remember that Hillary Clinton ran for president. Did you guys see her new article in the New York Times that they had to pull because they tweeted out, for the first time, I know it's hard to believe, but for the first time in 36 years, a man has chosen a woman to be on the Democratic ticket. And Hillary wrote back that she and Tim Kaine must have had a very vivid hallucination.
They have selective memory.
Just like, what? And you know, in Texas, they had the big vote to leave her out of the history books. It's just it erases people from history, and that's definitely something that I think is happening in this town. You can look at the gay history of this town and see when it really started, and I believe it was in, I want to say 1973, when the mayor gave us a gay day or some kind of thing like that. But you told me once, Kennedy, and I mean, this was one of the most profound things for me to hear as an activist in Austin, and that was that as the capital city, we owe it to our other communities, our other towns and cities, to have a center in the capital city so that people can come and march and have a place to convene, at the very least, for other people to come.
Every queer senior, every queer youth, every person in the community needs an alternate place to call home, especially since we lose our homes more often than our heterosexual peers. But specifically being the center of our state and the political seat of power, having more infrastructure there, specifically around civic engagement. I can't tell you how many times 6 different queer groups use our parking lot to park their cars, to jump on a bus, to go to Austin on the same issue, on the same topic, uncoordinated from this community. So you add all of those other communities, Dallas, San Antonio, West Texas, everybody coming in, and I think that there is an opportunity for Austin to help coordinate more. And I think that if there was a stronger queer infrastructure, and Austin would just be the natural leader in so much of our advocacy work.
Yeah.
That would make us better at it. And that would help us turn the state a different color for 501c3.
Agreed.
But, you know, move toward the issues that we really need to change in order for our community to be served better. And I think that it's more of an opportunity or a hope that as Austin's queer community builds more of this presence, more of this infrastructure, whether it's virtual or bricks and mortar, they can bring the partners together. They can bring the community centers together, and we can really fight for these issues better than we ever have before.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, we definitely, I think we need to have something here. And of course, I think it should be modeled off of y'all. You know how much I'm a diehard Montrose
Dallas
fan.
is a wonderful center too. I've never visited because I love Dallas.
I love Dallas too, but if I have to go somewhere out of the house, I'm going to go to Houston.
We have excellent food whenever the restaurants are open.
That's right.
That's going to be the new
bad PR. Like, Houston has led so many incredible things in the national struggle for queer liberation, but we have terrible PR. We're really bad about telling our story. But if you come and visit, I promise we'll give you some good PR. We'll tell you some of the highlights of our stories.
Why don't y'all get a PR firm, or do you have one that you just don't want to put it out there?
You know, honestly, I do not know the question. I don't know the answer to that question.
Y'all should be on the cover of all the magazines, all of them.
Well, you're doing a pretty good job of PR right now. You've informed me a lot that I didn't know, and I used to live in Houston.
Thank you. I love this community. I got to live in a lot of other places. When I was housing insecure, I fled to Miami like many queer people do. Thinking it would be better, and it didn't really have the infrastructure, and I had to leave my hometown to realize it actually had the infrastructure.
Oh wow!
And it was a big part of my story. And so coming back and experiencing how much Houston actually had, but just like someone who lived here before, took it for granted. And there's a lot of people in Houston that don't know about our amazing queer orgs, the 150 plus LGBTQ organizations here, the Montrose Center, and that's also happening in Austin right now too. There are great organizations. There are great movements. I mean, I met Susie coming down to an amazing protest after a certain election that hopefully we'll soon be able to forget. And, you know, just there's so much amazing activism, so much amazing support. And I know that you're inside of a community that can help you build. The Montrose Center was not just built on queer dollars. The Senior Center is mainly ally money. You need those allies, have a seat at the table. We really need you allies that love your queer folk to continue to support us and really take to heart some of these more sad elements I'm telling you about our hunger stats, about our homelessness, about what's impacting our youth and our seniors, because we need your support. We don't have enough infrastructure. We don't have enough wealth. We don't have that enough in our community to build it without your help.
Well, and I also think how it's so important right now to, because I was going to ask about how many organizations, right? It's really important. I keep going back to the Paul Ray book about cultural creatives, right? That once the cultural creatives realized how many of them there are, there'd be no stopping them. I feel it's the same way, like just in general, like we're buried under this avalanche every day of all this negative sludge of hideousness in the news. And it's so hard to keep your spirits up or feel like, you know, anything matters. I don't know, like I don't know the solution, but the one thing that keeps coming to my head constantly is how we're able to see each other, like more, see the patterns, see all the interlinkings, you know, that root system underneath that's really powerful and strong. Like, how do we make that happen?
Oh, I hope you don't need me to answer that question.
Well, it may happen as a matter of necessity. I mean,
yeah, I think it is
the
happening.
only way we survive is for that to happen.
It's something I ponder a lot. Yeah, not that you have to answer, but I just think it's so.
If I had the secret to that, I think I'd be doing even more important work.
Exactly.
What we do at the center here is we build community in every interaction, every program. We look at every time a client calls, every time we get to speak to another amazing community as an opportunity to strengthen and build community. And we keep that as our focus. So that even though we're going to have breakdowns along the way and mess things up along the way a lot, overall, the positive work that we're doing is bringing people together. We're doing a campaign right now because we can't get together and do special events. We have to fund that youth rapid rehousing program I told you about, which has a $175,000 deficit, which used to come from community events. So we're doing a peer-to-peer campaign and asking people to email their friends and family so that we can close that deficit and we can take 60 youth off the streets. We're ending that with a watch party where we put a video out we can all watch together. So even in our social distance fundraising strategies, we want to build community and continue to remind people that they're part of something that's bigger. They're part of this whole. And we're really strong. I mean, we're building a $26 million senior center, which is really hard to do.
Yeah.
And it's really hard for any community to do it, you know? And it comes from that just consistently building community. And you never know when what you're bringing together is going to become something great. One of the orgs that graduated from our nonprofit Incubator launched their own COVID fund, just serving trans women of color. And they're actually getting the money out much faster than we are because we get these federal and state dollars, which require our clients to jump through more hoops than I like, because every time you get federal dollars, there's someone on the end of that trying to make it hard for people to get that money.
Of course.
And so there are these wonderful funds popping up, like the Save Our Sisters United Fund here in Houston, and the TENT, the Transgender Education Network of Texas. These funds that are popping up that are coming from some partnerships with us, but also mainly doing all of the work on their own. But it's like little, like very small things that we get to do to kind of help along the way. And these amazing organizations do incredible work. And now there are a series of funds in Houston, not just the Montrose Center's LGBTQ COVID-19 fund.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Kennedy, what do you have when you dream about the future of the Montrose Center? What do you want it to be doing 5 years from now? What's the big dream?
Okay, and it's an international dream, and I'm a Pisces. Well,
go Pisces! All right.
I'm a big dreamer, and I came across in the Jewish community the Jewish Federation. And it is a fundraising arm of the Jewish community. And if you look at every major city, there are Jewish community centers, Jewish senior centers, family services, and this incredible fundraising just organization, national organization called the Federation. I want there to be a queer federation. And I want that to help do all of the important work we're not doing right now outside of this country. And all of the countries, the 72 plus of them, where it's still illegal to be us, or we're being killed. We used to be a destination for immigrants and a lot of queer immigrants. There's so much work to be done on the international front for gay liberation that we've got to really get our I was going to say a bad word. Get our stuff together.
It's okay.
Here so that we can do that work out there. Because we have to lead in space. We have the resources. We have the rights. We have the freedoms. We need to build our infrastructure quick because there's a lot of people in Africa, in Central Asia, in Russia, across the globe that need our help. Yeah.
I'm worried about those fellas in Chechnya. That Kadyrov guy is a scary, scary individual.
Yeah, we have to be dreaming internationally, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think there are a lot of, there is world pride organizations. Of course, those are more like parties, but at the same time, it's a community. It's an international community that's come together. Is there one like that for, support centers and centers?
Not so much centers, although there'll be like, an HIV center that'll pop up in, Pakistan and random places. I think the focus there right now is still on, there's like basically two organizations that really work to rescue and move queer people that are being killed in their countries into refugee status. They've relocated into Canada over the last couple of years. I think you can imagine why, because Canada, I think, is really one of the strongest countries right now to allow individuals in. I think in any kind of LGBTQ refugee search will help you uncover those organizations and find ways we can support that international movement.
Mexico is actually pretty good too, from what I understand, and it's fairly easy to become a citizen. They legalized gay marriage before we did.
That's true.
And they're
the San Francisco of Mexico. So
it's true. And Mexico City is very liberal. It's very liberal. They have a whole gay neighborhood like Paris does, and you guys do. I wish, but we don't have that. We have a street. We have one street here. The more I talk to you, the more I learn how to talk to other people to try to what my dream is. I want us to have one of those centers, even if it's a house with the Kind Clinic sharing rent with, out youth. I think that would be a great start.
Well, and even without a physical presence, all of the community leaders that are listening to this can be a force for community building, for bringing people together. Because that's essentially what the Montrose Center does every day. We build community and we bring the community together. That's our main roles. Being a physical space really does help. It really does help. Being able to give out meeting rooms and fundraising space and offices. Being able to give all that stuff out gives you a lot of power and a lot of privilege. But there's a lot of work that can be done in that space even before.
Are you going into the office? Are you working from home mostly?
I am a part of the small group that goes into the office. Yes.
Well, that's good.
It's good for me because I have I don't work. I get very distracted, as you can probably tell from this conversation. I get very distracted. Work from home is not ideal for me.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you came on to talk to us. What are your big plans for the rest of this week? Just working hard?
Oh my gosh, our fiscal year ends at the end of this month. We are going to raise that $175,000 we need to house those 60 youth next year. We're going to pay for it. We're going to get that done. That is the goal for August. So that's what we're working on.
That's going to be great.
So where do we go to send money?
Yeah.
MontroseCenter.org, please. Housing Our Future is our fundraising campaign right now, if you would love to support us. But also, if you want to support the Austin community, why don't you Google Centerlink LGBTQ and see what organizations in Austin are listed there and support your homegrown queer infrastructure.
Thank you.
And if you can't find anything, I know Out Youth is amazing.
Yeah, they are. We have some good, and I appreciate you saying that. We do need to fund our folks, but there may be people in Houston watching.
Yes, in that case, MontroseCenter.org.
Give it to me now. Oh, there it is.
And I just put it on the stream there, the direct link on the stream.
Awesome. It's getting dark in my office. I gotta get a lamp.
I can tell.
Yeah, I haven't Zoomed this late before.
Oh.
Zoom after dark,
That's it.
Oh, this is cool. You can also set yourself up via Amazon Smile to support the Montrose
That's
Center.
great. And we have an Amazon Wishlist, which is feeding our pantry right now because we're giving out so much food. So if you want to give items instead of dollars, you can go to our Amazon Wishlist, which you might have to easier. I'm sure that's on this website somewhere. Might be easier to find that on Facebook.
You'll have it on Facebook. It'll just say, "This is where." Okay, we'll find out.
It's probably on the website somewhere. I don't know where it lives on the website. So
It's okay.
I'm
go to
trying
the
to
Amazon
search
Wishlist.
it.
I promise.
You're a very busy individual, so that's okay. You don't have to know everything.
We'll find it. We'll track it down.
At least not today.
Well, in the last 30 seconds, what's your big message you want to leave in our minds as you leave?
There are heightened vulnerabilities in the queer community, but there's a lot of beauty and strength. We need you, our allies, and we need to come together more with our natural allies and all the other intersectional communities, and vote a lot, everybody, in November, so that we don't have to have as hard of a year as we've a couple of years. I have like 50. We really need, because this administration has been really bad on our issues, and we need to do better.
Okay, thank you very much.
And thank you, Susie, for such a good lead.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Right
Kennedy's the
on.
best ever.
See you
I had a lot
sometime.
of fun.
Me too.
Or come back again. Visit
Yes.
us again.
Yes, you will. Thank you so
Okay,
much.
we'll see you.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Bye. Bye, y'all.